The sun had not yet climbed over the horizon when the first dust devils began their slow drift across the empty main street of Cimarron Flats. The town lay quiet, its wooden buildings long weathered to the color of dry sage. A tumbleweed rolled. Across the boardwalk, outside the general store, rattling against the planks like a warning, Levi Kincaid came down the street from the East End. A man whose shadow ran longer than his steps. He rode with the careful rhythm of a man who had seen too many winters and lost too many things to hurry. His hat shaded a face lined and pale, his eyes narrow under it, the corners wet with yesterday's wind and yesterday's memory. The horse beneath him snorted, stamping a hoof in the dirt, and Levi did not move to quiet it. Some things, he thought, were better left alone. At the far side of the street, the Miller house leaned against the morning light. Its boards sagged, and the smell of sun-baked hay and old sweat hung thick in the air. He slowed his horse as he passed, sensing attention. There he did not yet name. The town had a way of whispering its sins before a man even knew they existed. Inside the small, cramped saloon at the corner, the air was already thick with smoke and the sour odor of unwashed bodies. A piano sat silent in the corner, its keys yellowed and cracked. Only a single patron moved, a man in a gray coat who spat onto the floor and watched Levi. Through the doorway with cautious calculation, Levi tied his horse to the post outside and stepped in. The boards groaned beneath his boots, a sound he had learned to respect. He ordered coffee without sugar, the kind that could bite a man awake. The barkeep, a skinny man with one eye and a permanent grimace, set a tin cup before him wordlessly. Levi drank slowly, feeling the heat spread from the cup into his chest and out through his limbs. Then he heard her voice. It was soft at first. A fragile thing carried on the creak of a door opening. She spoke in half-formed sentences to a man leaning against the far wall. Levi did not move at first, simply listened. He recognized the timbre of fear, of pleading, of someone who had been traded in the world like a worthless coin. She can't go, she said, voice trembling. I won't. The man she spoke to laughed, low and cruel, shaking the smoke around him. Your father got a fair trade, girl, a horse and some whiskey. That's all you're worth in this town. Levi's hand twitched near the holster at his side, but he did not reach for it. He never drew first unless there was no other way. Instead, he stepped closer, boots slow, deliberate, as though measured steps could hold back the world's sharp edges. Her eyes found his, across the room. Wide and dark, rimmed with red. Levi's own eyes softened without his permission. Something. In the way she held herself like she had swallowed the sun and yet refused to burn drew him in. He did not speak. He never did unless it mattered, and right now it did. Go, Levi said quietly, and it carried more weight than the pistol at his hip. Now, outside. Don't wait for anyone to decide your worth, the man in gray noticed. His laughter caught in his throat. He measured Levi once and found the kind of calm that did not bend to threats. There was a silence, pregnant and stretching, before Levi walked toward the door. The girl followed, feet tentative in the dust, but her pace quickened when she realized he would not hesitate. Outside, the air was dry, bitter against the tongue, and the sun had begun its climb, casting long shadows that turned dust into fire. Levi swung onto his horse and held out a hand. Mount, he said. I'm not here to argue. She hesitated, then climbed, her hands trembling against the reins. Her hat was missing, revealing hair that had been chopped unevenly, a reminder of a father's cruelty or his ignorance. Levi's jaw tightened. There were many wrongs in this world, but some could be met with action. They rode in silence down the main road. Past the empty church with its broken bell and the auction house where goods were sold with little thought of the souls attached, Levi did not speak. She did not ask questions. She had learned long ago that questions were dangerous. The wind carried the scent of sun-baked earth and the faint tang of fear. Levi's hand brushed against the leather strap of his gun, not to draw it, but to remember that protection could be a quiet thing. He brought her to the ranch beyond the ridge, a place that had known sorrow and neglect, but also hard work, and the honest bite of earth beneath one's nails. He stopped by the gate, letting the horse sniff the air, sweat beading along its flanks. "You're safe," he said finally, though his voice carried no triumph, only a steady certainty. The girl looked at him, eyes dark with suspicion and hope, alike. "Why? Why would you?" Levi's eyes drifted to the horizon. "Some things are worth doing right," he said, almost to himself, even when no one's watching. She considered that, biting her lip, and then nodded slowly. Did not fully trust it, nor did she need to. Trust, like freedom, was a thing learned in increments. For days they worked the ranch together. Levi taught her to ride to mend fences, to read the sky for signs of rain or trouble. The silence between them was comfortable, not awkward, a language of understanding that needed no words. She began to laugh softly at times, the sound fragile but persistent, and Levi realized that the world had forgotten to let her breathe. But peace in Cimarron Flats was always fragile, where travel's fast where greed is thick, and a town like that rarely forgives debts unpaid or deals undone. One evening, just as the sun was dying behind the mesas, Levi saw the shadows of men approaching the Ridge Sheriff Dalton among them, his badge glinting like a lie in the dying light, and a handful of townsfolk with eyes sharper than their knives. Levi dismounted, placing himself between the girl and the approaching threat. The sheriff's smile was polite but thin. "Evening, Kincaid. Thought we'd have a chat about property and well obligations." Levi's hand rested on his holster, not drawing, just hinting. "She's not property," he said evenly. "Dalton's." Lips twitched. "Property has a way of being defined by contracts and cash, Levi. You know that." Levi stepped forward, boots crunching against stone and sand. "Then maybe it's time someone redefined it." The tension hung like the heat above the desert floor, and the girl watched him, her hand resting on the saddle, heart pounding. Levi did not flinch. His moral compass had been forged in years of loss, in a world where choices were measured in dust and blood. And he had learned that some wrongs required standing in the fire even alone. Dalton laughed, a dry, barked sound. He signaled, and the men around him fanned out. One of them raised a pistol. Levi's hand dropped onto the gun, as if it had always belonged there, his eyes never leaving Dalton's. A single shot rang out from the distance, a rifle's crack hand, the tension shattered. Dust erupted around a rock where one of the sheriff's men had collapsed. Chaos followed, gunfire exchanged, shouts tearing through the desert air. Levi moved, with a precision born of years spent, where hesitation was death. When the smoke cleared, Dalton lay on the ground, beaten and humiliated. The townsfolk scattered in nursing wounds. Levi stood, hand still steady, as the girl came to. He looked down at her, not as a savior, not as a hero, but as a man who had seen enough to know that the world could be cruel. And yet mercy and justice were choices, not accidents. "You're free," he said. She nodded, tears streaking her dust-stained face. "Thank you," she whispered, though she did not know what for. For survival? For respect? For the quiet dignity of being treated as a human? Levi shrugged, the wind carrying dust into his eyes. "Don't thank me. Just live. That's all I ask." The sun set behind them, painting the desert red. And for the first time in her 19 years, she felt like someone had looked at her and seen gold, where everyone else saw a trade. Levi mounted his horse without a word, tipping his hat. Watched him ride into the horizon, a silhouette of a lone cowboy against a dying sun. And she knew that while the world might still be cruel, there were men who walked it who remembered that kindness was not weakness, and justice did not always require law. The wind whispered across the ridge, carrying the scent of dust, sweat, and the faint echo of a life reclaimed.